I'm a freelance journalist here in Bristol, and I've actually been in touch with one of the men named in the article.
Okay, well, I know you won't, but just remind you not to name him until I've decided whether or not we're going to. And what? Go on.
I hope I can convince you not to.
Yes.
So I suppose my main issue with, well, this article specifically, but also the sentiment overall of journalists naming and shaming members of the public, I'd say the strongest argument against it is the lack of background research into the mental health and the life situation of the men involved.
Well, that is close to my starting position, but you know how I'm going to respond to that. I say, how do you make these men contemplate the impact upon a Greta Thunberg or a Caroline Flack?
That's a very important question.
Yes.
I don't think the answer is immediately apparent, but because the answer isn't immediately apparent, we shouldn't rush to answer the question by naming and shaming them. I think when we're not
hang
sure
on, I'm not talking over you. I just think we need to clarify some of the detail, which is they named themselves and they shamed themselves on the public page of a media Facebook page. It'd be very different for example, when people send me text, and I occasionally, if I'm a little bit bored during the break, I'll Google the phone number, and it's always very amusing to see people who haven't got the wit to realise that using a work mobile phone to wish cancer upon my family is probably not the best thing to do, and I wouldn't ever name and shame that because it's not public, and they didn't realise how stupid they were being. Surely these people do and should realise how stupid they are being.
Well, I mean, it's a very generous assumption, but unfortunately the fact remains that, millions of people have access to the internet, and millions of people can be of low intelligence or poor mental health and make stupid decisions. But I think it's a very different ethical consideration if journalists choose to broadcast their name to an audience of thousands.
But you're completely ignoring the fact that they've chosen to do it themselves.
I don't know if that is completely ignoring it. Okay, well, let's put a different spin on this.
I'd rather carry on with this one. The difference, the nuance here, and it's more than a nuance, it's a crucial distinction between here is Joe Blogs under the name Joe Blogs marching into the public space and saying disgusting things. Therefore, for you or me to say, God, that Joe Blogs is out of order, here's that disgusting thing he said in the public space. I think the phrase naming and shaming actually is redundant. I shouldn't have used it because they have named and shamed themselves on from the point of view of Bristol Live, on my public Facebook page. All I'm doing is pointing at what they have already done.
I suppose the question would be, if the aim of the article is to discourage...
Well, it must be, mustn't it?
If the aim of the article is to discourage online bullying and harassment, then what they've actually done is create much more of it, because these men obviously have now all been attacked by thousands of people via the internet. So
yes, but they've been attacked for being disgusting. They haven't been attacked for trying to hang on. They haven't been attacked for trying to save the planet.
But the one man that I've been in touch with is the one person that you haven't mentioned on the radio this morning.
Right.
Because there were different levels of severity to the comments, which is another problem. I think the article lumped comments together which were differing. So the person that I spoke to was the man that made a reference to the popular children's novel Matilda, and he said that they should Mrs. Trunchbull her, which is a scene from...
No, I read that one out.
That to me, if in person, uttered with the benefit of tone of voice and facial expression, in some context, may not have been considered as offensive as the other comments, but that hasn't been mentioned either on BBC Radio Bristol.
What hasn't been mentioned?
They were very lovely in the end, but sorry.
What hasn't been mentioned?
Well, the worst comments were read out, but
I read that one out.
Between the comments,
I read that one
out.
out.
Apologies.
No, that's okay. And I added that he also wrote, she's not a young child and she's a product of anti-fa parents.
Right. Well, I neither can support nor deny that comment. That seems to be an opinion, and it doesn't necessarily seem to be.
But it's an opinion that he has published publicly, and you're saying that we should somehow remove the publicly bit from his own choice.
I'm saying that as journalists, there's a different consideration to be made when we don't know the mental health of the members of the public that we're targeting.
Well, that is a tricky one, isn't it? Because that gives a...
That's why you're not 100% sure. So that's the only point I'm making.
Well, I hope you won't take this the wrong way, but I'm more sure now than I was before you started talking that I will name them. Unless you're telling me that this particular man is vulnerable.
Well, since he's been named, his elderly father has been receiving abusive messages. His elderly father has the same name.
But you know what? You know what? The thing to point out here is this is the world you create, and only by showing you what you're creating are we going to persuade you to stop doing it.
I don't know if that's. I don't know if I agree with you on that. See, I'm split on the issue.
So how would you get him to stop doing this then, Seb?
I think that this is the big conversation. I think in order to tackle the very important issue,
I am going to ask you that question again, however long you talk.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm answering the question, but I can't answer it with a single sentence. I'm just trying to make the point.
So how are we going to stop him from doing this again to another teenage girl?
How are we going to stop him personally? Yeah. I'm not sure an eye for an eye is the way to solve these problems.
But it's not an eye for an eye, because he's attacking someone for trying to save the planet, a blameless, harmless 17-year-old woman, and the people attacking him are attacking a bigot, a troll and a bully. So it's not an eye for an eye.
That's it. That's one way of looking at it. You say
no, that's the only way of looking at it.
There is some nuance to that.
Go on.
Well, look, I'm a massive fan of Greta Thunberg, right? And I think what she's doing is incredible. I don't support abusive comments towards her. I don't support any form of abuse on the internet. However, she is adored.
What about abusive paedophiles and terrorists on the internet?
What about abusive paedophiles and terrorists?
Well, presumably you'd be supportive of that, would you?
I don't think that abusive paedophiles and terrorists are comparison to someone making a...
No, nor do I, but that's why I would never use a sweeping statement like abuse on the internet. I'm always opposed to it. I'm not. I'm all in favour of it.
There's nuance to it. There's nuance to it, which is my point with the man that I've spoken to. Rightly or wrongly, he thought he was making a light-hearted comment.
Has he issued an apology?
He thought he was making a light-hearted comment.
About anti-fat parents? What does that mean?
Anti for parents, I'm not responding to that because I can't speak for the man.
So you rang him up without having read the whole thread?
No, I rang him up because I just wanted to see if my suspicion that the naming and shaming creates online abuse and hence isn't an effective way of solving the problem.
But the whole thread it's been published by Bristol Live, and so I mean, listen, I'm going to part as friends, I promise. But you rang in to tell me I hadn't read out a comment I had read out, and then you rang up.
I apologise.
No, that's fine. And then you rang up the bloke who'd wrote it without reading the next comment 3 lines down in the same thread.
No, I did read it, but what you have to understand is that I'm looking at this issue as to whether or not naming and shaming people discourages online abuse. I don't believe that it does. I believe it.
Well, do you think this fellow you spoke to today will be doing it again tonight?
Very doubtful.
Well, then it works.